Well, I grew up on Grand Caille Road around Prospect Street, and it was a pretty tough neighborhood as far as what we did. We played football without pads, tackle football, and there was some pretty big kids around there, and that helped me get a little faster just to stay away from them. My parents sent me to Holy Cross camp in Waveland, Mississippi, and I set a camp record as far as points, 499 out of 500. And I was faster than any of the other kids around there. And so I kind of learned that when you look at all kind of kids coming from all kind of places, that I could compete or win in races. The first time I ever participated in sports was probably junior high. Well, I was in the band, played the clarinet and the saxophone, and I love music today. And back in those days, you had to make a choice between music or athletics, and so I chose athletics, thank goodness, and wound up going out for the track team. Coach Al Tragle wanted me to run the hurdles because it cut down on the competition versus the sprints. There's a lot of kids that are fast, but a lot of people can't hurdle. I was lucky enough to have Coach Al Tragle as my coach. He was smart. He knew how to take the cobwebs out of your head and your doubts and your insecurities and so forth. One day we were at a track meet, and the coach for the other team said, "Coach Tragle, you have any sprinters?" He said, "No, I don't have anybody." And he said, "Hey, LeBlanc, go run that 100. So I went over there and won it. And the other coach said, "Coach Tragle, I think you found a sprinter." You know. Played a little football. I wasn't a starter. But had some success in the 10th grade. Believe it or not, a funny book is what really helped me be successful. We used to read comic books back then, Superman and Batman and all, and there was a picture of a skinny kid on the beach getting sand kicked in his face. And so, and the girlfriend left with the guy that was all muscular. So I said, "Man, look at there, you know." So I ordered some Joe Weider free weights, and all summer, from about June, July, and August, I'd work out 3 days a week from about 6 o'clock at night to 9 o'clock at night, and with free weights, and every week put on 10 more pounds. And I got strong and put on muscles for the first time in my life. And I think that was one of the contributing reasons that I got stronger and had some success in my junior and senior year. In my junior year, it wasn't expected for me to win, but my best race was the hurdles, so I won the low hurdles. That I thought I had a chance at, but the 100, I don't know, just, who knows, there it was, you know. So I won state that year in two events. You know, Joe LaBruza was the fastest guy back then, and he had a win-aided 9.6 time, and he came to Terrebonne to run us, and it was a new track, and I wound up beating Joe as a sophomore. When I was recruited by LSU, I went up there, and they called Joe over, and he said, "Want you to meet Joe LaBruza." I said, "Oh, I know him." And he says, "Oh, Dalton," he says, "it's finally good to see your face." And I was a little embarrassed by that. I was kind of expected to win, and I didn't feel like it was pressure. I just feel like it was just something to do for the team and keep competing, you know. And I got recruited by University of Houston, LSU. I had a scholarship actually to West Point, and I wasn't smart enough to know that'd been the one to take. But I wanted to run track, and I wanted to be an architect. But I guess I could run faster than I could draw, so I wound up going to Northeast because they had a lot of world record holders and All-Americans on their team. And they were one of the track powers of the South. And so I decided I'd go to a track school. I pretty much adapted. It was a long way away, but we didn't come home on the weekends, and it wasn't a very big school, so you know we didn't have much to do but train. My freshman year, I scored more points than anybody else on the team, and I didn't figure that. The coach had told me that. I didn't know it. I just kept running races, hoping to win. My sophomore year, I was gonna, be a hurdler again, and a guy transferred from the Naval Academy, and he was the third best hurdler in America. And we ran against each other a couple of times, and he just tore me up. So I said, "Whoa, it's no use placing second all the time. I went back to the sprints. I liked hurdling until Roger Morgan came to town. He was a great hurdler, great guy, and he and I became good friends. Yeah, I think the sprints was better for me. It wound up being part of my dream from when I was 9 years old. A guy challenged me to go out for the football team, and I said, well, I think I will. So I went and asked the coach if I could have some shoes. He said, oh yeah. He handed me the shoes, and I came home and ran in football shoes a little bit. So we were going out to our first game, and I'm sitting in the bus, and we're going out there, and I go, oh my Lord, what have I done? Because I knew I was going to get hit pretty good. We played East Carolina Pirates, who was Atlantic Coast champions, and we went over there in their home field, and we wound up beating them. I scored twice that day. Football is such a team sport that it was a lot more fun actually than track and field. Track and field is such an individual sport that there's a lot more pressure on you, and I felt like being part of that team. We were about number 9 in America Small College that year. McNeese recruited Terrebonne High School football players, and there was tons of football players. Tony Bird, David Bourgeois, Earl, the Marsheves, all kind of players from Terrebonne went to McNeese. So we were going to go down there and play them. I asked those boys, I said, well, what was your game plan? They said, well, it was going to stop you. I ran 70 yards on the first time I touched the ball and scored a touchdown. And after that, it got real tough because whether I had the ball or not, there was somebody hitting me. I had been drafted by the 49ers, and they, got a couple of good steak dinners out of that. But I decided not to sign that because the Houston Striders had recruited me to run with them. And they had pretty good athletes on the Houston Striders. The world record holder in the 100 meters was Jim Hines. He was on the team. John Carlos, he was on the team. I would have done some things different because I dieted in college, and it wound up causing leg injuries, in my opinion. What I should have done was more weight training and bulked up to be more of a sprinter rather than a hurdler or a quarter miler. I think I'd have had more success because that 1 year of football put strength back in my legs, and that's when I started excelling. I actually got faster after college when I was running for the Houston Striders and then the Army. The world record holders in the 4x100 relay was USC at the time, and I'd run against a guy indoors. He outleaned me, but it was a close race. His name was Lennox Miller. He was a 2 or 3 time NCAA 100-meter champion, and he was their anchorman for USC. And we were out in California at the Coliseum, and they challenged us, the Houston Striders, to a 4x100 race. And so I led off, and I handed it off the stick to John Carlos, who wasn't bad. He was, second in the Olympics. And then our third man was Timmons running against O.J. Simpson for them. And then our anchor man was the world record holders, but running against Lennox Miller. Lennox Miller outleaned him, and so they continued to be the champions. But it was a great race. It was a lot of experience running with those kind of world-class athletes. Went through ROTC in college and figured I was going to go to Germany. I picked Armor as my branch, figuring, they'll send me to Germany. Well, the Army has a way of sending you where they want to, and that was Vietnam. But in the meantime, they had, I guess, figured out I was a pretty good athlete, so they put me on the All-Army track team out in California, and there was tons of Olympians on that team, and wound up winning the Inter-Service Championship in Texas. That's where the Army, the Marines, the Air Force, and the Navy, and also run against each other. And then the Military Olympics that year was in Athens, Greece, and I went to Athens and wound up getting a silver medal there. And so that set us up to go to France for the Military Olympics again. And in that competition in France, which I kind of figured was going to be my last race because I figured I was destined to go to Vietnam. They wanted all the soldiers there. About halfway through that race, I accelerated again into that other gears that you have to try to do if you're going to win, and that's when I won that race, and wound up being that gold medal that I always dreamed about. Got to hear the national anthem and stand on that victory stand, which was my dream. You have to have a certain gift to be there, but you also have to work at it. I had studied the starting techniques of Oman Harry, who was the German gold medal winner in the 1960 Olympics, and studied a lot of the German techniques, and it was successful by learning what those scientific people did. And so it's a combination of some gifts from God and some hard work. My dream was to live in California, and I'm so glad I didn't do that. I'd given a tour of the campus to a lady and her daughter, and she went back and told this guy at State Farm, says, "Hey, I met a nice young man, pretty good personality. Y'all need to meet him." So he called me up, and I said, "Oh, no, sir." I said, "My daddy worked so hard in insurance. That's not for me." He said, "Well, why don't you just come out and look at us?" So I went out there and found out they were the #1 auto insurance company in America, #1 homeowners insurance company in America. I said, "Well, that sounds good." He said, "Well, look, we have an opening in Houma." I said, "Well, good." So I went back home and started and worked hard at it, knocked on doors, door to door in the hot summers. I fell back in love with Houma, and I'm so glad I did, because it's been good for me and my family, and I wouldn't live anywhere else. This is great. Marie's a great wife, and she's very supportive, comes in and pays the bills every week. She's a big asset to my insurance agency and my real estate company. Yeah, I'm still working. I still enjoy it, but my staff and I worked hard to take care of the people, and that's mainly why I'm still doing it, for my staff and for my policyholders. I had a dream back then when I was about 9 years old of someday hearing the Star-Spangled Banner and representing the United States and being on the gold, not the silver, on the gold stand and hear the national anthem. And it took maybe 12-something years, but that dream finally came true in my last race that I competed in France.